witchy woman.
I don't know. I don't know. Hey, everybody, you're listening to Dumpster Diving with
Janice.
and Jane, and we are some witchy women today.
Yeah, we are.
It
Yeah,
just
we
felt
are.
good. It felt good.
I like it. You never know what song's going to hit you, right? And that was the
Right.
one. That was
Yeah,
the one. I
it
love it.
was.
I love it.
I'm
We
going
are,
with the Halloween playlist, so be prepared, everyone.
I love that. I love how much I mean, I love music, but you clearly like music is a way you express yourself,
Yes,
right? And so
yes.
yeah, I love that you have that ongoing playlist and you're like, today we're going to be bitchy, I mean witchy, so witchy women. That's it. I
Exactly.
love it. I love it. It is all right, so it is early October and we're doing like back-to-back recordings, man. We're trying really hard, right, to
We
like
are.
build a library for you guys, and spend a lot of time with each other and obviously with this growing audience. So today, I love this, Jane. We decided, I feel like all along since the beginning we said it, and we need to talk about self-care. We need to talk about self-care.
Right.
And we haven't really had an episode focused on it, although I think we talk about it a lot, right? Like we talk about all the different ways we're doing things. So I love that today we're going to bring everybody an episode that's really kind of about like all the ways. And here's the thing. There's a lot on social media now about self-care.
Yes.
There's a lot in the news. Like our world right now is honed in on this idea of self-care. However, it has not always been this way. So I think what we're going to do, right, is like back up first, kind of talk
Right.
about what we mean when we say it, little the history, etc. And then take it from there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because you're 100% right. Go back to when we were early 20s or teens and stuff like
Mhm.
that. I mean, I don't even remember the term self-care.
Oh God, no.
I mean, it didn't exist. It really
Yep.
didn't. And so, there's a lot of us in our age range, out there in the world, out there in the ether, the men and women of the world, and everybody in between, that it's being having self-care is taboo. It's like a sign of weakness, or oh, what do you have
Yep.
to do that? And even getting a massage is like, oh, that's a hippie kind of thing to do. And so we have that bias kind of hanging over our head, and I think it's taken our generation longer to embrace self-care than it has the younger generations, because it's so prominent with the younger generation.
Oh, it is. And now that you say that, it's funny because I even, with some of our older daughters, I remember when they were yeah, middle school aged, right? And they're on YouTube and they're like finding all of the makeup tutorials and all the things. And all of that can be considered self-care, right? In terms of like the ways that you incorporate that stuff to make you feel better about yourself, to make you give yourself a certain look that you want to portray, whatever it is. And so, yeah, I think you're right. Like our daughters will always know a world where this idea of self-care was lifted up as a plus,
Right.
whereas I think our generation early on, and certainly our mothers, and this isn't only about women, everybody, but
Yeah.
obviously we tend to be the ones who really ignore ourselves. Um, but now I feel like hopefully we'll be the last generation that faces
Right.
that idea that self-care is selfish,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and another thing that I used to think of self-care, when I started becoming aware of different social classes and stuff like that, like only rich people could afford to
Mm,
take care of themselves. Like going to the spa, getting a massage, getting their nails done, getting their toenails done,
yep.
getting their hair done by somebody. Even that is a form of self-care, because you're taking the labor out of it and having somebody else with an expertise take care of you and make you feel beautiful,
Yeah.
or whatever feeling you're trying to get out of it, and to enhance that self-care aspect or that mental health aspect.
I
And
think that's so important. That idea that it used to be perceived as a class issue.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, that's honestly how I thought of it. We
Yeah.
don't go do those things, we do them ourselves because we can't afford it,
Yeah.
and we just did it ourselves. So I come from that mindset. But, even now, I have a friend that does my hair. Could I do my hair? Absolutely, but I don't want to. I really don't
Exactly.
want to spend the time doing it. I enjoy our companionship, our friendship.
Yeah.
It's a sense of therapy for her and me. She lives
Yeah.
vicariously through me. I've lived vicariously through her with with our stories, and we have that common ground, and it's fun. I don't trauma dump. We just talk about life and have fun with it. So, but that's part of it, that connection.
Yeah. I love that. That's again, you're broadening it into all kinds of things, right? Self-care can be two people spending time. Heck, you could even be doing your own nails together, right?
Right.
But the idea is that it's the interconnection with that person as well as what you're doing to your physical self, right? To
Right.
take care of yourself. And I think that you're right. Like I think that the way we take care of ourselves are so vast, and it's certainly not class specific like you said. It can look very different because it can be as simple as taking a bubble bath, and as complex
Right.
as going and paying for a massage, right? Or
Right.
even, like, honestly, I probably would say to you that if there is one way I engage in self-care that is probably my favorite, and I give up things for it, right? It's not a it's well, I give up things for it, is the fact that every 2 weeks I have somebody who some folks who come and help clean our house, right?
That's
So right, you would think that that's like, oh, that's different, but it really isn't, because, and you said it, this is what made me think of it, Jane, is time, right? That for years, like Joe and I, right, every Saturday we carve out 5 or 6 hours and we would clean the house top to bottom together. And we know in a lot of places that partnership doesn't even exist for a lot of people. The woman usually, or the guy, like one person is doing all that and taking on that burden. But then we finally got to a point where we were like, okay, not having this time for each other, for our own selves, for whatever, is way, it's way more taxing on us, right? Like spending that time. And so, yeah, we finally were like, okay, let's look at the budget and see what can we cut in order to create the opportunity or the ability to do that. But that is the thing that if you said, what's the thing you're least like to give up? For me, it's that, because
yeah.
my sense of well-being and like calm and all the things is so reset every 2 weeks, right? Because
Right.
I know that's done and I don't have to like be worried about it.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And for some people that's not, affordable or whatever, but like
Exactly.
I said, you went through your budget and you made
Mhm.
room for it because it's worth the time. you
Exactly.
and having that. So, well, let's get into some of the things that are out there about self-care.
Yeah,
And,
let's do it.
and then we can talk about the whole purpose of we were talking self-care anyway, but then, it's October, so we like to creep people out and we're both kind of taboo. So we're talking taboo self-care. But what I was we were doing a little research, and what I found is this article, and I thought it was so funny, was, and it's titled "Self-Care Can Be Seen as Taboo."
Yeah.
And and there's three main reasons, and I love this because it was like, oh my gosh, this is our generation's mindset.
Yeah.
The number one thing is the femininity of self-care. It's a girl thing. But the fact of the matter is that everyone needs self-care in whatever shape or form that is, right? Because we just talked about 10 different ways you could, show yourself some self-love and self-care. But it's more about the time to be able to enjoy time versus not.
That's
You
right.
can enjoy cleaning your house for 5 or 6 hours, even though you were doing it with your husband and all of those
Yeah.
things. But you could be enjoying time with friends or walking on the beach or doing something different, right? So it's not just female, take a bubble bath, go get a massage, la di dotty. It's the men going out to play golf or
Exactly.
work in their garage and work on their car and do something that they actually enjoy and that fills their bucket, right?
Okay, that is I love that point so much, Jane, because so often the femininity of it, right? We often think about self-care and we think about women, and the perception in the past has been you need it because you're weak, right?
Right,
And yet we've never thought about the fact that, like you said, when the guy goes off to play golf or he's working on something and he's a working on some carpentry project over here or whatever, that's all a version of self-care. That's you getting your own kind of space
right,
and alone time and, yeah, resetting in your own way. And we've never looked at it that way. Those are manly things, right? Working on the
right,
car in the garage, oh, that makes you more manly. It's so
right.
interesting, the dynamic.
Right, but the thing that we need to remember as their spouses and or sisters or whatever, the female part of their world, is that that is their self-care. And that
Yes,
way, he's always out in the garage working on stuff. And rah, rah, rah. Well, yeah, he could be avoiding a lot of things,
sure.
or that person could be avoiding a lot of things. However, if they're doing it in a moderation and it's a healthy thing and they're producing something out of it and not just out there banging around and drinking beer and being
Yeah,
a caveman, you know, look at that. Look at that. But maybe that's their self-care. They want to be a caveman. I don't know. But, are they producing something? Are they creating something for your life together? Are they doing something fun for a friend or for themselves?
right.
it's that kind of stuff that we really need to stop and get out of our own head and go, oh wow, they're really putting time and effort into something for someone.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
themselves or somebody else, you know?
Exactly. Well, and like you said, even if it is for themselves, and that's okay, right? And I think that may be the kind of muddy water part where people start to get frustrated with each other, et cetera, comes when like one person in a relationship is
It's that
constantly
time.
over off here doing something and without them, right? No matter what that is. So let's get into like
Well, here, let's say the other two real quick,
oh,
and then
that's right. I forgot that was only the first one. Go ahead.
yeah, so self-care is anything that soothes you. Well, yes, it could be soothing, but it's more about clearing your mental mind,
Yeah.
and reconnecting with your own self and your mind and your body. Being able to like write reflective notes about your work can be difficult, but to clear your mind for the weekend, you may need to write that whatever frustrated you last week to get it
Yeah.
out, or whatever it is. And then number three was people use self-care because there's something wrong with them. Guess what, guys? We all have something wrong with us. Um, you
It's
know,
true.
none
Yes,
of
we
us
all
are
do.
perfect. None of
Yeah.
us. And the simple fact is that there's always something to work on. Not one of us in this entire world has nothing to work on.
That's right. Yep. No, I think that all of those things. So I love that you're taking that right out of the gate and then countering, right, those arguments about how self-care is selfish. So let's get into some of the other things. I mean, we have so much of our own life experience around this,
Oh gosh,
but
yeah.
what are some of the other things that you brought to the table? I know you mentioned like 7 pillars of self-care. What was
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so I found that I was looking up, okay, like for the people that are beginners, like what are some nice steps that we can lay out or
Oh,
whatever.
nice. Yeah.
But it also, what are the 7 pillars of self-care fits into, so each method of self-care fits into one of these 7 pillars. So the first one is mental. Okay, we
Yep.
covered that. Emotional, that's
Yep.
huge. We all need time to grieve and or decompress from the day or whatever it is.
Manage stress,
Yes,
relax. Those are all mental in my mind. Yeah.
exactly. Physical. Yeah, I mean, your body needs to be exercised,
Yeah.
so there's different ways to do that. Environmental. Some people's environments can be very overwhelming and stuff like that. So cleaning up a space, creating your
That's
own
right.
space for yourself, doing things like that, making it conducive to your lifestyle. Spiritual, whatever, if that's organized religion, being connected to the earth and nature, any of those things. Recreational, having a hobby, having
Right.
something that where you can produce something or achieve something or set a goal for yourself. And then finally, social. There's
Yeah.
definitely social self-care where interacting with other individuals or being by yourself, and being able to separate yourself from social status and be able to recenter and find who you are without that.
Well, you said 2 things on a previous episode, and so if for the people who listen to it, they'll know this. It was this the kind of ghost and scary episode we did of
Yeah,
Fireside Chats. You talked about 2 ways that you do that, right? One was that like when you get home at the end of the day after
yeah,
the long drive, et cetera, like you go either to your bedroom or to your backyard, to your garden, and you just need like 30 to 60 minutes just on your own, just to
yeah,
like decompress, right? I remember that was one of the things that you said in that episode in terms of like the way. And I will say, like, for me, one of the ways that I do it is I don't drive a lot. I work remotely now, but when I do, just having time in the car with
yeah.
nothing. Sometimes there's certain music I want to listen to. Sometimes there's, podcasts and that kind of stuff. But there are times where I'm just driving in silence. And that's a part of how I reset, right? Because it's just quiet. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I really do, I like to reconnect with nature because, when I'm at work, I'm in a concrete building and I'm in the city and there's all the noises and not a lot of, nature. It's very
Yeah.
man. And
Yep.
so when I get out to my neighborhood where it's a lot more nature and I sit in my little backyard with my plants and the hummingbirds flying around and the squirrels jumping around and stuff like that, it's just so nice to I sit and watch the animals, you
Yeah.
know even the little
Yeah.
lizards, I just sit and watch them and their little life and how simple it is. I feel it is. I know it's very complicated for them, but how just I'm just eating and I'm sleeping, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing, and I'm basking in the sun, and I just kind
Keeping
of
it simple, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
reset.
I love that. Well, and so as you kind of went through those 7, there were different examples that are in my mind, we've already kind of shared, and we're going to continue to say a lot of them as we go. But I feel like one of the really important things to think about, because so often, like you've said before, in addition to being an educator and all the things that I do with my professional persona, I'm a wellness coach on the side, so to speak. And I also do parent coaching and those kinds of things. And in both of those realms, when we talk about self-care, we do have to lift it up. And the big thing is just saying to folks, you have to carve out the time, right? Like we are, again, as women, but in general speaking, right? Many of us can relate to this, regardless of gender, but we often are the people who are least likely to engage in self-care are also typically the people who are taking on the problems of the world, right? The people who are constantly there to solve problems. You're the person who somebody else is always calling when something is happening in their world. You're the person the kids come to. You're the person that, your relative. And so oftentimes, even though I feel like we live in a world now where this idea of self-care is not considered selfish anymore, we are least likely to carve out the time, right? So as a wellness coach, over and over and over again, what I have to remind people of is, if you don't take care of yourself, then you cannot be the resource you aspire to be for other people, right? Whole different conversation than, you can't be everything to all people. But in the context of a world where you're trying to be, you have to carve out time for yourself, because otherwise, at some point, you're just going to crumble, right? And so self-care really is, you could argue, a very selfless act in terms of, I'm trying to take care of me so that I can in turn support you, right?
Yeah, there's a song lyric that I absolutely love, and it was, how can I bring anything to the table when I'm the table?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
Kanye West, I was like, that is one of the best lyrics I've ever heard, and it's so true. You can't serve when you're the table.
Yeah.
And so if you're not learning how to let the table be the table and be able to bring things to the table and accept the things that other people bring into the table, you'll never not be the table.
That's
And
it.
that's the self-care.
Yeah. So the first assessment of your status is determine, are you or are you not the table?
Table.
Are you or are you not at the table? Now, the other thing I think is really important too is, and we've kind of already gotten to this, but I'll say it out loud specifically, is the idea that it's not one size fits all, right?
Right.
Everybody's self-care looks different depending on who they are, where they are in life, etc. Right? There are things I do now that I couldn't have done 10 years ago, right? And also that they don't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be expensive, right? It can be as simple as yoga in your home. For some people,
I don't
prayer is their self-care, right? Like for some people, just the act of praying is their self-care. And I really like, I'm a big fan of the power of gratitude on our well-being. And so I'm a real big fan of gratitude journals, right? Like taking 5 minutes at the start of the day or the end of the day, especially if you've had a hard day, right? And just forcing your brain to put away all the things that have caused you stress, anxiety, all the things, and only focus on one or two things that actually brought you joy or for which you're grateful. It's amazing the impact that can have on our bodies. So this act of self-care can be very simple. And I oftentimes, again, in that wellness community, what I focus is on 5 minutes, right? Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm saying. And obviously the ideal is that you build from there, but as a starting point, everybody can give themselves 5 minutes.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's as easy as drinking more water. It's as easy
Yeah.
as treating your body better.
Yes. Yep.
Treating your body better. Treating your body better will make you feel better. And
Yeah.
then if you feel better, then you can say, "Oh, I can make 5 minutes for myself." And then
Yeah.
you can do the journal, and then you build off of that. Rome wasn't built in a day. We all know that, and so it's creating little habits and
I
ways to
love
remember it.
I love thinking about it like that. And I've referenced the book Atomic Habits many times on this show. I'll say it one more time. It's another great resource to go to in terms of thinking how you start to build those habits. But I love what you're describing in terms of scaffolding, right? Like start with something little and doable that, like, you hear it and you roll your eyes like, well, duh, anybody could do that. Start with that, right? And then after you've done that, build on it. Let that be the gateway to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I really think that's smart. So smart.
Well, one of the things I say to my clients all the time is, how do you eat an apple?
Yeah.
One bite at a time. You shove that thing all in your mouth at once. It's going to be terrible. It's going to hurt. You're going to choke, and you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And doing self-care is something enjoyable, not a chore. And
Yeah.
so that's what it's about, and building that time for yourself.
And
So
honestly, the other piece too is, if for no other reason, right? If you can't, if you hear all these things and you're still like, yeah, 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 but I don't have time, consider what you're modeling for your children, right? If you have children, consider what you're modeling for your children. And I feel like that's such a great barometer for people, I think. And it's oftentimes when in coaching sessions, I see people kind of like your Apple thing, right? Kind of all of a sudden get the light in their eyes of like, oh crap, like, okay, if even if I'm not going to do it for myself, if
right,
I don't do it, then what I'm modeling to my kids is that the way I'm operating right now, where I never take care of myself, is the way to live. And I don't want my kids to think
right.
that.
Yeah.
So sometimes even thinking about it like that.
Yeah. One the how I make time for myself is I think about, and this is terrible, but I think about the misery my mother is in, and
Yeah.
how angry she is, and how all of those things. And I don't want to be that way. So if I take care of myself now,
Yeah.
still be able to take care of myself then, and I won't be that version of an older person.
Yeah.
When I get older, I don't want my body to be broken down. So I'm doing the stretching and the physical therapy that I need to do now.
Yep.
So I'm not completely crippled with my shoulder and everything else.
Yeah.
When in my late 50s or early 60s, I want to have an active lifestyle. I want to have all those things. And if I don't start working on that now, I'm going
That's
to
right.
be repairing my body in order to maybe have that. Instead, I
Yeah.
keep it going, and take care of myself now to where I can just continue to do so when I'm older. And that's what keeps me going, because I don't want to be hurting all the time. And self-care is mental,
Yeah.
and mentally, my mother is mentally disabled in that aspect. She's
Yeah.
caught in her own stuff. So, you know, not that I'm in the mental status that she is in by any means, but we have to work on it now. We
That's
can't
right.
wait. Oh, it can wait. It can wait till I'm retired. No, because by then you're going to be broken down and angry with yourself
Yeah.
for not doing it before. So do it now.
Well, and I love that you're focusing on the physical too, Jane, because it is like, it's a myth that, oh, we hit a certain age and we just have to accept that certain things are going to
Oh,
happen with our bodies. And it's a myth, right? And so you mentioned a minute ago, food, right? Choosing that healthy piece, right? And so, I'll lift that idea up because I do feel like it's interesting how I wager a guess if we were to take a poll, right? And we said to folks, um, how do you, when you are stressed and anxious and, all the things, how do you engage with food, right? And for many of us, we grew up with examples of food is for comfort, right? And so because of that, the higher our stress and anxiety and all the things levels are, the more we're likely to choose that thing that only actually adds to all of it because it's not helping our bodies, right? Which
no.
doesn't mean that you can't enjoy food, and it doesn't mean that food can't be a comfort. But when we're in that cycle of we turn to choices that we know aren't good for our bodies because it makes us feel better emotionally, right? um, that's a cycle that we can break with self-care, right? And you alluded to this, right? This idea that like when we actually focus more on whole foods, our body feels better. And when our body feels better, our mind feels better, right? Our emotional, mental well-being comes along with it. And so, again, I'm not going to go too far down that road. That's what I do in the wellness world. But really thinking about, when you go to reach for whatever it is,
Our
uh,
relationship with it. Yeah.
yes, asking yourself the why, right? And what you hope it's going to do for you, just as a starting point, like you said, as a baby step to just thinking about it.
Yeah, and just making a journal about that. I'm actually doing a 6-week class, and I created an image for the class, and it's this young lady with headphones on, and she's like dancing, and I'm just slowing them down to say, what is your relationship with your favorite music? What emotions does it bring up, and why?
Right.
Same thing with food, or somebody that has an addiction problem. Like,
Yeah.
what is it that you're trying to achieve with this, and why, and how does this make you feel? How does it interact? And we could say that to self-care too,
That's right.
which brings us to the segue of the taboo aspect of it, and
Yeah.
this came up because we were talking about tattoos and piercings and stuff like that, and I said, well, that's my form of self-care, and you were like, what? And so we started talking about it, and
Yeah.
so I would love to have you segue into that, and then we can talk about that too, because there's some interesting self-care ways.
Well, it's this idea of like the intersection of self-care and positive self-expression. And I
Right.
say positive self-expression because we know there are ways that people express themselves that aren't good for them or dangerous for them or could cause them harm. So the intersection of self-care and positive self-expression, and kind of building off of the 7 pillars you shared with us earlier today, what I'll hone in on is ways that we engage creatively, right, with the world. And sometimes that's writing or painting or dancing, or like you said with your course, like music and the why behind the ways that it makes you feel. Sometimes it's different forms of physical. You could obviously, dancing is a part of that, yoga, but those are ways that we express ourselves that also have the side effect of being our part of our self-care. And then social and intellectual kind of come along with that as well, right? The idea of like carving out time to do the things that bring you joy with the people who bring you joy, right? Because again, oftentimes, you know, we're so caught up in dealing with the people in our world who bring us angst because they're in our faces,
Right.
that the people who bring us joy are left on the sidelines. And so actually being intentional about saying, so that's a way of kind of expressing yourself socially by being intentional about that and by putting up
Right.
boundaries and saying, so those kinds of self-expression are where I saw it intersect with self-care. And again, it can be, and the other thing I really loved about thinking through this a little bit is because we're using the word taboo, but this is not a particularly taboo concept, except that it's not something that we all do all the time. And that's the idea of
Right.
volunteering. The idea of volunteering as a form of self-care and self-expression kind of makes you go, what? But at the end of the day, it actually is exactly that, right? When we know there's research that supports that when you do for others in a way like that, it brings you joy in a way that then boosts your own mental
Right.
health, right? And
Right.
I was just having this conversation with our 16-year-old the other day because she's thinking about her college resume, which is an unfortunate way to think about volunteering, but because of it, it is driving her to realize, okay, there are, people in the world who have, far less than I do, who have bigger challenges than I do. How can I serve in a way? But that was how I was trying to drive her was, I know that you're talking about this because you're trying to figure out how to build your college resume. I'm thinking about it for you in terms of how do you expose yourself to people who have different experiences so that you understand the world better, right? And volunteering in different capacities is a way to do that. So, but when we say taboo, yes, that tends to get us into the realm of some of the things that people do. And you're right. When you said this, when we were chatting about this episode a few weeks ago, I was like, I have never thought about that, those kinds of self-expressions like tattoos and body art in general and piercings, etc., being a way of creating self-care. And I have, kind of traditional piercings and I have a couple of tattoos.
Right.
You obviously have really embraced, right, those ways. And I'm sure you have other examples that you'll share with us, but
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about, some of your experiences with those more what we're calling taboo types of
Yeah.
self-care expressions.
Well, it's multi-layered for me, and I'm sure as a lot of people that have extensive body artwork. But I feel like where mine comes from is a couple different places, but it's grown over the years because now
Yeah.
I'm 75% covered in body
Yeah.
artwork. And so, but and I think I've talked about this before, and I might have mentioned this about my tattoos, is it was something that couldn't be taken away from me. I just thought it was so cool that, no matter what, I would always have it with me. And
Oh,
because
wait, can you, I want you to talk about that a little bit more in depth because I think we've talked, I don't know if we've actually recorded a conversation about
maybe
that.
not,
So
maybe not.
yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. So as a child, I mean, we moved every 6 months. I think we mentioned that last night on our fireside chat, which you guys will hear before this episode. But we moved around like every 6 months, it seemed like, and we were in different schools all the time. And as we got older, junior high school age, we spent some time in California, and it was the first time we didn't move in 5 years. And I mean, that was a long
Right.
time for us.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the happier times for my mom. And so we got into 4-H and we were doing all those things and we were winning trophies and had grand champion chickens and sheep and all these things. And they lost it all in storage. They let it go. and they auctioned off our storage. And so like
Oh,
I don't
wow.
even have pictures of me as a child. Like I have to get them from uncles and aunts that kind of spent time with us, and they're just scattered, and we have nothing from our childhood. And so I became very interested in tattoos because I liked the artwork, but I was like, wow, that's something that I can always have, and I never made that connection until I was older, but I think it
Yeah.
spoke to my soul. And because we lost everything, and then things were always taken away from us, all the time. And so I think that's kind of my subconscious aspect of that's my self-care. It's something that I love, and nobody can take away from me. But also, as last night I was thinking about this morning, being an empath and having a hard time identifying with any type of group of people
Yeah.
has always been hard for me. It's not been hard. I'm more of a chameleon, but I never had my own identity or one group that I could say, yeah, I'm a part of this group,
Sure.
like everybody else, but like I'm really solid in this. In the tattoo industry and tattoo world, I felt that sense of home for me because I am taboo. I am unusual. I am queer. I am all of those things. I am not normal,
Right.
and not in the way that I think, not in the way that I feel, not in the way that, all those things. And I'm very much so an individual. And I felt like the tattoo industry was a sense of family, but you could still be an individual and have
Yeah.
a sense of style that you like, or put whatever you want on your body, and nobody's going to care. You could have eyebrows
Right.
that are tattooed on that are Celtic knots or flames, and nobody's going to judge you for it. And so it was like I finally found my people in that aspect, but it wasn't necessarily the people, but it was the mindset,
Yeah.
that I loved. It was a creative and build yourself up and make you feel good. It was, I feel good after I get tattooed.
Yeah.
But then I realized, so I feel good, I look good with tattoos, like they fit me. It's all of that. But then I realized that there was a point of release while getting a tattoo of like I felt almost euphoric afterwards, like I was be
Oh,
able to
wow.
release negative energy or whatever during that because I focused so much on mind over matter with the pain that I got really good at it. Now I can sleep through a tattoo.
Wow.
And it's a sense of therapy for me. So I call
Yeah.
it pain therapy. I need some pain therapy. And so, but it's not because I enjoy the pain, it's because I can mentally block it out and feel like totally different during that time and for a while afterwards. It's about 6 months, like I can shake off what
Wow.
it was. And the last time I got tattooed was when I was going through my separation and stuff like that, and I was like, I need a reset. And I went and got my palm tattooed, and it hurt like a mofo, but I meditated through the whole thing, didn't move a millimeter during the whole
Wow.
thing. And everybody was like, you're a badass. And I'm like, I know. And that's why I got this. And I'm leaving now, like, no, but it for me, it is definitely an energy, a negative energy release
Yeah.
when I get to the point where I'm like, I need to get a tattoo, even if it's a small one. I just need to get a tattoo, and it's whatever, something about it that just does it for me, so
That is so interesting, and I really appreciate that you clarified that it's not a pain-seeking endeavor.
oh,
It's the opposite. It's almost like a mind over matter,
the meditation.
endeavor for you, right? To be able to show that I can do this and actually not feel the pain. And I'm sure, like, again, neither one of us are therapists or counselors or certified in any of those things. But my amateur therapy brain thinks, yeah, there's a control there, right? Like being able to exercise that kind of ultimate control, right, is very euphoric. Like there's definitely a level of euphoria that comes with that.
And I love that you use the word control, because I'm definitely not a control freak, but when I feel out of control,
Yes,
that helps me recenter and feel in control, because I can
exactly.
control myself. I can do this. I can do all of those things, and I can make it happen, and have a really cool little piece of artwork. Like every time now I'm getting my legs filled in with bugs and slugs, we're like doing cool little things,
Right.
like it's, and to me now at this point, I'm not like, I have tons of big pieces and they all connect, but it's not it's for the artwork. I definitely love good artwork, but it's more for the experience and that meditation and that level of meditation.
And that, again, that's such a great, I think, insight for our listeners, because oftentimes you know, I'm going to throw out some stereotypes, right? So
Yeah,
some,
you pain.
no, well, that too, yes, that too, but also like, or you see somebody and you think, you know, the classic, you know, the girl at the beach tramp stamp, right? And
Right.
that's a thing, right? People go, oh, look at that tramp stamp, which, and the implication there is that she just got it, or he just got it, whatever, just to get attention, basically, right? Like, it's not meaningful, versus like, if you get one and it's meaningful, then that's okay, right? Like, that's all. But what you're describing is like, whether you get it for that reason or because it means something, or, but there's an additional layer, which is that it is a way that you engage in taking care of yourself. That's a
Yeah.
whole different level of understanding. And honestly, again, I'm still, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm still kind of carrying out a potential myth or assumption, but now I will wonder that now moving forward, when I see somebody like you who has so much of their body covered, I will wonder, like, okay, so, but now what it does is make me wonder why, right? Like,
Right.
so I only have 2 tattoos. The first one I got because my niece, back when she was graduating high school, was hell-bent on getting a tattoo, and I really wanted her to wait. I really, you know, this is probably really small-minded of me, but I was like, just let your brain fully develop before you actually start putting
Right.
permanent ink on your body. And so I just said, how about this? If you wait until you graduate college, that will be my college gift to you, and I'll go with you and get one myself. And that's what we did. And you know, it means something. It's the letters of two of my kids, you know, names, and a little heart, right? And then the second one I got, that was that way, that one's like 20 years old. The second one I got just recently, and it too, it was an expression thing. And so we have, you know, there's a long story of like, when I was an East Coast girl, and the Outer Banks of North Carolina was kind of where we spent a lot of time. And so some of the family still on the East Coast said, hey, let's get Outer Banks tattoos. And I was like, that's amazing, I'm in, I love that idea, it ties us together, it ties us to a place we love, etc. But then when I actually went to get it, I didn't like the options that we were looking at, because I wanted an ankle bracelet. And so the guy, you know, the artist and I, as we were chatting about it, he's like, well, you're here now. And I was like, well, yeah. And he's like, so tell me about the relationship that you have with Southern California. So long story short, now it's a combination of both of
Yeah.
those, right? SoCal OBX. My point is, and so it was thoughtful and intentional. I love the artwork of it, but for me, those were both driven by meaning, not by necessarily my love of art or the things that you're describing in terms of the ways you're taking care of yourself. And so I don't see myself having a million tattoos, right?
Right.
Because it's a different why behind it, right? But now, forever now, I'm going to ask somebody not what is your tattoo, or even what does it mean. I'm going to ask, so why do you, you know, why? And I got to figure out a way to ask that so it doesn't sound mean, but like, I'm curious about the why. Like, what's the why behind why these are important for you?
Yeah, what attracted you to
That
this
might be a good question.
lifestyle? You know, because it is a lifestyle. It's not, it's not just a thing. I mean, for people that are heavily tattooed, I'm
Yeah,
not talking about the person with the ankle and stuff like that. I mean,
right,
but if that's where you're going, great. But
right.
um, and people change. Like I got my first tattoo when I was 18. I knew when I was 18 I wanted to be covered in tattoos and I wanted cool
Yeah,
artwork. And I just thought it, and I also thought it was a social aspect too. Like for me, it looked sexy on a woman,
yeah,
and I saw that and I was like, I like that,
yeah,
and I want to look like that. And
yeah.
so, yeah, and I'm getting there. I mean, one day I'll have my butt cheeks tattooed. I mean, and whatever.
I never want to see that, for the record. I just want
Oh,
to go
but
on
it'll be so
record.
beautiful. It'll be so beautiful. You won't
I'm
even know it's my butt.
sure I'm sure, I'm sure, I don't even know it's my butt. All right, everybody, that'll be the true test 10 years from now. When we're doing our 10th anniversary episode, we will check in on whether or not Jane has a butt tattoo and whether or not it looks like her butt. So make sure you hold us to that 10
Tattoo
years
of
from
my
now.
butt on my butt.
That
No,
I would
Jane,
look
it
at.
looks like your butt.
That I would look at. Okay, that's the one. That's the one. All right, let's shift really quick then before we wrap up to, similar to the tattoos are the piercings, right? Same
Yeah.
thing. Like you are someone who can kind of represent the voice of folks who get I'm going to call them the more like less traditional, ear
Like
piercings.
earlobes and stuff like
Right.
that. Yeah, I mean, I've had a bazillion piercings.
Yeah.
Piercings are something different for sure because they take longer to heal.
Hmm.
Tattoos take roughly around 2 weeks and to a full month to heal, like fully, but they stop hurting after, they shed and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Piercings, they can get infected and inflamed and bumped and all of those things, and they were a lot more maintenance than and painful, like because
Yeah.
you get your cartilage pierced, you can get a migraine, and I'm
Yeah.
very sensitive, my ears are very sensitive and stuff like that, so I would do different piercings and end up taking them out within a couple of weeks just because I couldn't sleep or
Oh,
whatever.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and at the time, I also had an issue with cystic acne. And so anytime I got a piercing, I would develop a cyst underneath it. And it was just
Oh,
painful. And yeah, it was just bad. At that point in my life, I had a lot of hormones going on. I just had chase when I was getting these piercings. And so I've had several, but I've stuck with a couple. And these are more for like, yeah, I mean, the pain's quick. Like with the piercing, the pain's
yeah.
quick. They're just sore a lot longer and they talk a lot more maintenance, but there's certain things that I like the way it looks. So more for me, piercings are more of an aesthetic for me, and I like them. So because I've tried out so many different ones, and I like the ones that I've sat with. But there's a lot of people out there that kind of for the same reason as I do, or for that meditation aspect or whatever, they get piercings.
Yeah.
I've lived through, I've worked in the industry. I've seen a lot of body modification stuff that is for shock effect or for, whatever, like splitting the
Yeah.
tongue, and I've stretched my earlobes. I have big
Yeah.
earlobes. I've seen implants being done and branding being done and all of that stuff, all of the types of body modification you could think of. And they weren't for me. I don't, I
Yeah.
think burning your skin, like I couldn't do the branding, and stuff like that. That's a whole nother level of different type of pain. But it's a social thing too, so without really asking the person or whatever, I mean, they could be getting tattoos for social, they could be getting tattoos for the same reasons that I'm getting tattoos, because the enjoyment of the art and the creativity and all of that, but also the proving to yourself that you can get covered in tattoos and live through it.
So I was going to say, so is it, I guess the point here in the larger conversation of this conversation around self-care and all of that, and is that we can consider the link between self-care and self-expression. And so
Yeah,
when we see people expressing themselves in certain ways, I mean, the fact of the matter is for some folks, it is just because I thought it was cool. Like, and that's
yeah,
a legit,
that's okay,
like,
it's legit.
okay, exactly. That's legit. But for some folks, like you're describing, right? For some of it, it's very intentional and it is about how, expressing to the world who we are, how we are, etc., in ways that ultimately then serve to contribute to our mental health positively,
Well,
because we know this expression is out there, right? And it's something that everybody can see and know.
totally, and I really want to. I mean, this is our platform, right? Our dumpster diving with Janice and Jane is our platform
Yep.
to inform people of other opinions and different ways to think of things. And this is huge because, being a heavily tattooed person, I'm seen differently by a lot of people.
Yeah.
I've had little old ladies clutch their purse as I walk by, and I am not a very threatening looking person.
Right.
I
Right.
carry
Right.
myself well. I'm usually well dressed. And they still, because of the tattoos, are like, oh, she's a
Yeah.
criminal or ooh, a drug addict. And,
Yeah.
but the people that are from the industry or are, part of it in that social status, they know how much money goes into this and
Yeah.
that, and stuff like that. But also,
Wait. I'm sorry. So you're saying that everybody doesn't get their tattoos free in jail? Oh, so
no,
sorry. Wow. Mind
crazy.
blown. Okay,
Oh my God, I
continue.
have a funny story before we close out that I will tell you about that. But I had a certain point I was going towards for this is like crushing the stereotype of
Yes.
they're just a dirt bag because they have all these tattoos, and
Yes.
that they actually might have something awesome to say, and don't judge a book by its cover.
Yep.
Um, but also it also doesn't mean that I'm an exhibitionist, you know
Exactly.
that in that I owe the public my answers to why I got tattooed, why I got certain tattoos, what I was thinking, and all of those things. They're for me. And when I get molested by general public, I mean, I worked at a retail store one time where we wore aprons, and I was wearing a V-neck t-shirt, and an old man walked up to me with his wife standing right there and pulled my shirt down to see if I had any tattoos lower than what he could see.
Oh my God.
And I pushed his hand away. I said, "Excuse me." He's like, "Well, I mean, don't you have them there for everybody to see?" And so here's another misconception.
Wow.
And I had a neighbor, an older gentleman that I shouldn't even, I use that term very loosely, an older man. Well, like, so do you go out in your backyard naked? Are you an exhibitionist? I mean, he straight up asked me, and I was like, what? Well, you have all those tattoos. I figured that you'd want to show them off to everybody. That doesn't mean that I want to show them off to everybody,
That's right.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, so
Well, they're for you, right? Like that's the
me.
misconception. They're for you.
Yeah, they're for no one else but me. So anyways, yeah, I wanted to bring that up real quick because I've had those inappropriate moments with people I don't even know. I'm like, here, let's talk about this. And never grab something because you never know when it could be fresh. I've had that happen too in the grocery store.
All right, so we're gonna end on your story when I said
yeah, okay.
Tattoos in jail, which I love that you have a story, of course.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's a cute story because it involves Chase. So she was probably like 6 or 7. And by now I'm already covered in tattoos. Like her whole life, she's known me being covered in tattoos. We're sitting in traffic and there was a truck next to us. And it was a construction worker, and he had his sleeve up so you could see his arm and you could see his arm tattoos, but he was wearing this orange shirt. And she looked over and she was like, "Oh my gosh, that guy has been in jail." And I go, "How do you know that?" She goes, "Look at all of his tattoos." And I looked at her, and I looked at him, and I looked at her, and I looked at me, and I'm like, "So is that what you tell all your friends, is that I've been to jail?" She's like, "No, not you, Mom, but that guy, yes." I'm like, "No, he hasn't."
Oh my gosh, that's
even awesome. My own kid, because of social and all the other crap
that's right.
You can hear from other people, she thought that this man over here probably spent tons of time in jail getting tattoos because that's what people think, so
oh my gosh.
Well,
and I think we're definitely in a world where picking up from the tattoos, kind of bringing us all the way back then to the broader topic of self-care, like where those myths are being busted, right? Because even like I don't know how long it's been true, but like once upon a time you couldn't be in the military if you had a tattoo. That has changed, right? So I think that whole idea of this being I don't want to call it accepted because nobody should have to wait for other people to accept it, but a better understood, I think,
better understanding,
way of life is definitely becoming more prominent. So backing all the way up then, folks, our point today was really to add to the conversation around how critical it is for us to carve out time to do the things that bring us joy, or contribute to our mental and physical and spiritual and social and environmental well-being in positive ways. And again, we started this episode by saying, listen, lots of this is constant. You can't go on a Instagram or TikTok or any of those things these days without seeing something about self-care. And yet what we know is you can hear it over and over and over again and still ignore it. And so this is your sign. This episode today, in this moment, when you're listening to it, if you have not already begun to carve out 5 minutes a day for yourself, this is your sign that it's time to do that. And we've given you lots of ways. As always, you feel free to reach out to us, either DM us or email us at dumpsterdivejj@gmail.com. If you feel like, I know I need to and I can't, and you just don't have anybody in your world who can push you over the edge, we're always there to push you over the edge. Doesn't that sound sweet? We will always be there to push you over the edge.
We are ready. We have our little kicks on, ready to just push
you over the edge. Kick you right over. So this is your moment, you guys. As always, like, subscribe, share, keep those downloads, keep those clicks coming. We are looking forward to more fun after this. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.